What would a tesseract look like if we 3D printed it and took a photo? Part 2. You probably want to see part 1 of the video first. Start. I have a question, my girlfriend asked. How do we know this picture is correct? After all, I've seen other tesseract representations and they look nothing like this. Like this? I asked. Yes, she responded. It's true, but this is a beautiful computer animation that shows all of the tesseract's internal structures and features. It's not a photo of a tesseract if it were to suddenly appear in front of you. Why not? She asked. A photo only shows the 2D surface of a body. This animation shows everything. After all, I can't take a photo of your face and see your backside at the same time, as in this animation. Nor can I see your naked features, as your outside layers, clothes, will hide my view. I have another question, she said. I've seen other animations where objects disappear into the 4th dimension, because we can only see 3. How does this affect a 2D photo of a 4D tesseract? I slowly closed an eye. What are you doing? She said. You're just too much beauty for both eyes, I replied. You're a 3D body. My single open eye can only detect 2 dimensions. Why haven't you disappeared into the 3rd dimension when my single open eye can only detect 2? And if you haven't disappeared, why would you think an object can disappear into the 4th? The reason you have not disappeared is that your backside cannot hide in the 3rd depth dimension without having a front side with which to hide behind. It's the same in the 4D world, just with more sides. The back side, the left side, the right side, all need to hide behind the front side. Are you saying that I have a big backside for my front? She asked. You can't disappear into the 3rd or 4th dimension, even though my single open eye is unable to detect distance, the 3rd dimension. After all, to gauge distance, we need both eyes. She also closed an eye. I can still see distance, she said. She held up a finger, brought it close to her nose, and concentrated her focus on the prize. After a moment, she quickly switched closed eyes. As she did so, the finger seemed to jump position. Each eye has a different point of view, and so the finger appears to move when you switched closed eyes. The less it moves, the more dominant that eye. Most people have a dominant eye in the same way many people can be right-handed. Without 2 open eyes with which to view the world, our brains cannot gauge distance. It's like seeing only a flat 2D picture on a wall. But I can still see distance with only 1 open eye, she claimed. It's just an illusion of perception, I said. The screen with which you are viewing this video can only display 2 dimensions. Is the red cube further away or closer than the white ones? Is it the same size? What about now? Is the red cube moving towards us or getting larger? Perhaps it's both. The truth is there is no depth or distance in a 2D image. It's just a mirage. You can't vanish an object in the 3D world, as the object always has a front which our eyes can see. The 4D world has the same frontage, and so obeys the same rules. But what happens if the object does not have a front? Can it hide in the 4th dimension then? How can an object not have a front? I asked. Imagine you're holding 2 spheres in front of you. It does not matter how I rotate or manhandle them, the spheres will always be in view. They can never hide in the 3rd dimension, as I'll always see their front face which light bumps off. There is no view angle where they do not have a front face. The closest thing to a 2D object in our world is a piece of paper. If I place the paper between the two spheres, you would still be able to see the sides of the paper, even if it's edge on. It's a rule of our world that a 3D object must have 3 positive dimensions, even if it's just 1 atom thick. And so an object can never vanish despite the orientation. It's the same in the 4D world. An object in the 4D world must always have 4 positive dimensions, and so can never truly disappear. But let's suppose we can have a 0 dimension in our 4D world. Can't we flatten our object and orientate it so it disappears from our 2D view? After all, you can't prove a 3D object, once dropped into the 4D world, would not have a 0 value dimension. But I do have evidence that this may be impossible, I replied. If we acknowledge that a 3D object must have 3 positive dimensions, even if it's only 1 atom thick, then length, width, and height must always be positive. This leaves just the extra dimension, the extent, to be 0. This may seem fine until you realize the object can be rotated by 90 degrees, and the extent side will enter one of the always positive dimensions. You see, the extent is just like any ordinary dimension, such as height or width. If we rotate an object with height and width, then it's possible to swap them. After all, a 6-foot man that lies down is no longer 6 foot tall, he is 6 foot long. So if length, width and height cannot be 0, then neither can the extent, because with a rotation they can all be interchanged. Let's just suppose it was possible. If we had a 0 dimension front, could we disappear like the Invisible Man? I thought it through. I agree we would not be able to see the object directly if it had a 0 dimension front face. But there is another barrier to invisibility. We need a light source to see. A light source will create shadow. Even if we could not see the object directly, we would still see the shadow, and so the object would still be detectable. Even if the light source was directly behind our point of view, then the fact we have 2 eyes, and therefore 2 points of view, would mean we'd always see the shadow no matter what. More light sources means more shadows, not less, so our invisible friend would always be detectable. What if we had no shadows? A shadowless invisible man? Yes. The only way to remove the shadows is to remove the light source. Then we can play Kiss in the Dark because everything would be hidden in the 3D or 4D world. Lucky invisible man, she said. To be continued. Hey, thanks for watching. Thanks goes out to my single subscriber. You are awesome. Thanks, Mum. A contribution, any contribution would be great. After all, there's only so many dead grannies I can inherit from to keep these projects alive, before I have to go back to the real world. Displayed on the screen is my QR code to my funding page. It's a Buy Me a Coffee page, which I also use for my other website, osplus.org. The website is at the bottom of the screen if you need to type it in. If you do go there, you should be taken to a page like this. Anyway, thanks goes to the following open source projects which I used to create this video. The credits are in the video description, and in no particular order we have Wikipedia and Wikipedia Commons. OpenSCAD, a 3D modeler with an animate function. LibreCAD, which I use for the outlines. Inkscape, which I use for the colouring in and placement. GIMP, which I use for touch-up work. AudioCity, which I use for sound work. And OpenShot, which I use to stitch it all together into a video. There's also images taken from the Wikimedia Commons. As I said, credits in the video description. Thanks for your hard work, and if you can't sponsor me, consider sponsoring them. Well, that's about it. See ya.